Hey everyone, it's Pastor Tom with the 24 Today podcast. I want to talk to you about a big picture God. In other words, God can see the big picture and we can't. Have you ever heard the story of the blind men and the elephant? This is an old poem that originates from India, and it's just a loved poem, and so people have talked about it and written about it and just done a lot of things with it over the years. So you can find it if you want to, but I will just summarize it for you. And again, it's called The Blind Men and the Elephant, and it's a story about 6 blind men who wanted desperately to figure out what an elephant was like. And so they go to a place that had an elephant, and each of them go and they feel the elephant. Of course, they're blind, they can't see the elephant, but they grope along until they feel a part of the elephant. And so one of the men begins to feel the side of the elephant and how sturdy the side of the elephant was. And so he exclaims, well, an elephant is just a wall because it feels so hard and sturdy. And then the second blind man, as he's feeling his way and groping around, he comes upon the tusk of the elephant and discovers that it's round and it's smooth and it's sharp. And so he determines that what an elephant is like a spear. And so he says, well, an elephant is just a spear, a different kind of spear. And so the third blind man, he grabs hold of the trunk of the elephant, and he determines that an elephant is like a snake. It's just a big snake. And the fourth blind man, as he is groping around, he feels the leg of the elephant, and he determines that an elephant is nothing but a different kind of tree. And then the fifth blind man, as he is feeling around, he's able to touch the ear of the elephant. And he says, you know what an elephant is? It's just a big fan. It's just very much like a fan-shaped something. It's kind of like a fan. And then the sixth blind man, as he is reaching around, he feels the tail, and he says, I know what an elephant is. It's nothing but a rope. It's just a different kind of rope. So here you've got 6 blind men, and each of them are certain, without a doubt, that they know what an elephant is like based on their own specific experience. They know without a doubt what an elephant is. But in reality, they were blind. And more than that, they were myopic. Myopic means that you're only interested in your opinion, how you see things, and you really aren't open to the ideas and a bigger perspective of what something really might be. So not only are they blind, which will ultimately cause them to never really know what the elephant is like because they can't see the elephant, but more than that, they are also myopic. They believe that their specific experience explains it all. And they even disagreed with the other blind man and said, no, the blind man is like a snake. No, it's like a fan. But they were very myopic, and because of that, they end up missing the big picture. And here's my point for you today. We do the very same thing. We end up missing the big picture of what God is trying to say to us, what God wants to explain to us. One, because we are also blind. None of us know what tomorrow holds. None of us know what today holds, the rest of today. None of us know even 1 minute from now what's really going to happen. We assume that we know. And so based on our assumptions and, our education or our experience of the past, we assume that we know what the elephant looks like when in reality we don't, because we're blind. And we also struggle from the whole myopic thing, in that whatever our experience is, we tend to think that's just the way the elephant is. So here's 3 things that we do, especially if we are looking at life in a negative way. If whatever we are reaching out and feeling in life right now is hurtful or painful or confusing, or it's causing us to feel some kind of fear or loss, if we're reaching out and we're feeling that part of life that is like that, or if you will, that part of the elephant, then what we will do is, like the blind man, we will say, well, this is the way life is. Whatever we're feeling right now at the moment is just the way it is. And so we make these broad, all-encompassing statements and feelings based on how we feel today, or how we've felt in the last month or 2, or maybe even 6 months or a year. And we get, especially when we're feeling negative, we draw this negative conclusion, like this is just the way life is. And then secondly, the longer we go in making those broad negative statements about the way life is, the longer we go in that, we will also come up with a conclusion of, and this is the way I am. Because, we're seeing life through our eyes every single day, and we're feeling that elephant, if you will, every single day. We're reaching out and we're feeling pain, or we're feeling fear or negativity or doubt or lack of. So not only do we tend, like the blind man, to make this conclusion, this myopic conclusion, that this is the way life is, but then sooner or later we're also going to end up saying, and this is the way I am. Because we're seeing things through the first person eyes, through our eyes. And if we determine life is bad, and sooner or later, we're also going to say, and I am bad too. I deserve this, or it's because of the way I am, the way I act, or I am cursed. It's just bad luck continually comes my way. It's the way life is. It's the way I am. Which reminds me of a story. And the story is of a grandfather who fell asleep in his chair, his lazy boy chair, and his grandchildren want to play a trick on him. So the grandchildren go and they smear some Limburger cheese, some very smelly cheese, on the grandfather's mustache. So the grandfather eventually wakes up and he starts sniffing around, kind of like the blind man filled the elephant, sort of like you and I feel what's going on in our life right now. He starts to sniff and he says, "This room stinks." And he yells out to his wife, who happens to be in the kitchen, and he says, what's wrong? What's going on? What's this odor in this room? She says, "I don't know what you're talking about." And so he then goes into the kitchen and joins her and says, man, can't you smell how bad this kitchen smells? The kitchen stinks too. And then he ends up going around to every room of the house and one at a time determining that the whole house stinks. And then he opens up the front door and he takes a big whiff of the air and it smells too. And he says, and the whole world stinks. It's very much like the blind men and the elephant, very much like you and I, where we determine because of what we're feeling right now as we reach out and we grope and we feel the elephant, the part of the elephant, the part of life, the scary part, the fearful part, the painful part, the uncertain part. As we feel that, then we make this broad determination and we say, and this is just the way life is. And then sooner or later, as we're thinking negative, then we'll also say, and this is the way I am as well. And if you believe in God, and God is in your equation, in your picture, and you're thinking negatively, and you're thinking life just stinks, and so do I, well, eventually, as you stay in that way of thinking, then you will also say, and this is the way God is. Life stinks, I stink, and so does God. The whole world stinks. And then we also eventually will add, if we stay in this way of thinking, we'll also add, and this is the way it always will be. So not only do we make this broad determination that life is bad now, and that I am bad, and that God is bad, but then in our negativity, we do like the blind men, and we say, and this is just the way it is. This is just the way the elephant is. This is just the way life is, I am, and God is, and it's the way it always will be. And that is the description of despair. That is the description of hopelessness. When the reality is, though, that we feel hopeless, but the reality is that we are blind and we really can't see the elephant. We really can't see the big picture, but yet we have determined that this is just the way life is. It's always going to be this way. Life stinks, I stink, and God stinks. And like the blind men, we don't have the capacity to fully understand the big picture. All right, so the Bible offers a solution to that, and it's in the book of Matthew. And it's chapter 6, and it's verse 25. And Jesus is talking, and this passage is called the Sermon on the Mount, and Jesus is talking to a group of people who are extremely poor. In that day, in the Bible day, there were only two classes, economic classes of people. There was the extremely rich, and there was the extremely poor. And Jesus was talking to a large group of people who were extremely poor. These were people that didn't know if they were going to have enough money tomorrow. They didn't know if they were going to have enough food tomorrow. They didn't know if they'd have proper shelter, because the shelter that they lived in last night or today, because it's so temporary, it could be blown away by the next storm. And they really didn't know what tomorrow would hold. And so for them, their primary concern is just making it through the day, and their primary concern is the future, not having enough. And when they reached out and they felt the elephant called life, and life felt very scary, and life felt like their piece of the pie was going to soon be out and there would be nothing left, they didn't like life. Life was bad, they were bad, and God is bad. And in reality, I think what they ended up doing was they worshiped the love or the need for money and things more than they worshiped God. So in the beginning of Matthew chapter 6, before this passage that we're going to look at, Jesus says, you're going to have to make a decision. You're going to have to either decide to love God or love money, but you can't love both. And for you or for me, it may not be money, but it might be something else that could be interfering with our love for God. And for God to really work and be a part of our life, and to really work to have a relationship with Him, He is going to have to be first. And so for this particular group of people, as they reached out and they felt the elephant and they felt all the insecurities of not having enough of the physical, earthly things of life, then for them, they began to worship just the thought and the desire to have more. And God said, no, you got to worship me. You either worship money or me. If you worship money, then you get what you get. But if you worship me, then I will make sure that you have enough each day to exist on, enough money, enough shelter, enough clothing. So he says then, Jesus says in Matthew chapter 6, verse 25, he says this is why I tell you not to worry about everyday life, like whether you have enough food and drink or enough clothes to wear. Jesus says, you're so hung up on money, you're so hung up on not having enough things. I'm telling you to let me handle that. I'm telling you that your life has been consumed by what you reach out and feel, and it makes you scared, it makes you nervous, it makes you fearful of tomorrow, and you're all consumed about that. So consumed that really that's kind of all your life is just waking up and worrying about tomorrow. And I'm saying to you, let me take care of today and also tomorrow. By the way, tomorrow never comes. When it's supposedly tomorrow, it's today. Whenever this 24 hours is done and whatever we call tomorrow, it really is today. It's one day. It's 24 at a time. It's the day that we're living in. It's always that way with God. It's one day at a time. And so Jesus is saying, please stop worrying about what you call tomorrow, and understand that I am in that part of time. You can't live in tomorrow, but I am bigger than time itself, and I am in that part called tomorrow. I'm already there. I'm already taking care of it. But most of all, I'm in today, and I'm going to help you through this day. Your lack of food, if you let me handle that, you could enjoy life again. If you could turn that over to me, your lack of drink, your lack of enough clothing to wear, understand I've got that handled. If you let me take care of that, life would be so much better. In fact, then he says also in verse 25, isn't life more than food in your body and clothing? And he is saying, isn't life bigger than that part of the elephant that you're reaching out and feeling? Isn't life supposed to be more? Didn't I create you to do more than just wake up and worry all day long and then go to bed at night and fall asleep in your worry and then wake up and start worrying again? Isn't life more than all your worries about food and body and clothing? I certainly created you for more than that. And then Jesus tells them this little story about birds and lilies. Jesus is always the one who teaches, by using visual illustrations. And I think he's outside. Well, I know he's outside because there's a Sermon on the Mount, and I've actually been to that area where he preached it from. So it's outside, and I think there's birds that fly over. And so he says, look at those birds in the air. Do they have enough food to eat? And do they have enough water to eat? Look at the birds in the air. Have you ever woke up, one day and you walked around, you see a bunch of dead birds flying on the ground because God didn't feed them and God didn't give them water? No, in reality, what you would consider one of the least of all the creatures of this earth, the least important of all the earth, Jesus is saying God takes care of them. God knows them. He knew when they were born. He knows when they were going to die. God may even have names for them. He knows every single one of them. He knows what they look like, how much they weigh, everything about them. And God, every single day of their life, makes sure that they have enough food to eat and enough to drink. Winter, spring, summer, fall. All day, every day, God's got a worm or whatever they eat. God's got it for them. And he's going to lead them to where they need to be to get that. And God's got water for them every single day. So Jesus is saying to this crowd that has made life, as they reach out and feel the elephant and they're all scared about it, they've kind of made light. They say, this is what life is like, this is what I'm like, and this is what God is, and this is the way it's always going to be, and I hate every minute of it. God said, isn't life supposed to be more than that? Give me today, just like I take care of the birds, you are far, far more valuable than a bird. I'll take care of you. And then God says, and look at the lilies of the field. Look how beautiful the lilies of the field. And you talk about insignificant plants or flowers, whatever. It's just lilies. And they're not even like lilies that you would take to encourage someone at the hospital. These are like lilies of the field. And yet God has thought about them so much that he clothes them and he makes them look beautiful. And God, gives them enough sunshine, enough rain. God's got it all worked out. The lilies of the field. And if he does that for lilies of the fields and birds, how much more will he take care of you? This is the message that Jesus is sharing to them as they were reaching out and they were feeling their lack of, and they were feeling their fear, and they were determining that this is what life's like, this is what the elephant's like, this is what I am like, and this is what God is like, and it'll always be bad. Jesus is saying, calm down and let me worry about those things, because life is supposed to be more than that. I want to relieve you of that. Let me have this 24-hour period. How did you get here anyway? How did you get to this 24-hour period? Well, it's because of God. It's because of God's blessings. The Bible says that every good thing, in the book of James, every good thing comes from God. You are here in this day because of God. And you may not be the richest person, and you may not be pain free, and you may not be worry free, and all of this stuff, but you are here. The question is, do you have enough food to get you through the rest of this 24-hour period? Do you have enough water? Do you have enough clothing? Do you have enough shelter to get you through this 24-hour period? Well, if you do, it's because God got you to this day, and he has always made it so you have made it to this point, and God will get you through tomorrow, because God never changes. So since he made it you be able to get to today and through tonight, you can rest assured he's going to do it again tomorrow. But if you can't let go of this thought of the future, if you just can't, you're so worried about the future, which, by the way, tomorrow you never get there, because it's always today. But if you're like me, and sometimes you get so concerned about the future and tomorrow and all the things that are out of your control, then there is a verse that in Jeremiah 29:11 that God would just say, again, you can't experience the future. You only can experience the day. But just understand, I am so big. I am so much bigger than time, space, and matter, that I actually can be in what you would think of as tomorrow. And as I am there waiting for you, know this in Jeremiah 29:11, where it says, "For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, and they are plans for good and not for disaster. They are plans to give you a future and a hope." God is saying, I'm waiting for you in what you call tomorrow, and I'm already making plans, and they're good plans for you. They're plans for your good and for your future and for a hope. As you feel hopeless because you think that this is the way life is and will always be, and you think this is the way you are and will always be, and the way God is and will always be, understand there is hope in tomorrow. It may not be that your situation is all of a sudden gets better, but I'm going to find value and hope and joy in whatever that day holds, because I've got plans. I've got you. I helped you make it to today, and you are going to make it tomorrow. You see, the reality is that none of us can see because we're all blind. None of us can really see that elephant called life. And yet this does have to do with sight. It's God's sight. None of us can see what the elephant looks like. And we shouldn't determine what the rest of life is, or even really what the elephant's like, or what life is based on what we're feeling, or what we're like, or what God is like. Instead, we should rely on the one who can see. And that's what faith is. Hebrews 11:1 says this, "Now faith is the confidence in what we hope for and the assurance of what we do not see." It says in Hebrews 11:1, I know you can't see the elephant, but this is what faith is. Trust that there is a God who got you here today in this 24-hour period, and he is the God, as Jesus says, that has not only today, but he has tomorrow. Stop worrying about tomorrow, because tomorrow, has enough stuff in it once you get to tomorrow. But have the faith and the confidence so that you can have hope instead of despair. Have the faith and the confidence in the one who can see, and his name is God. God can see the elephant. God can see the big picture, and it is our job as his children just to live in today and stop making these broad determinations on what life is and what we're like and God is based on what we're feeling right now. Because frankly, what you're feeling right now may be very bad, and it may be very painful, and it may be very fearful. But it doesn't have to say this is what it always will be. And it doesn't have to say that there will be no reason for joy, no reason for hope. And it doesn't have to say that you can't enjoy this day. Because if you would learn, like I try to learn every single day, to let go of all of the worries about the stuff that God takes control of. As you are his child, God is working all of that. If you and I could just learn to just say, I'm going to give that to you, and I'm going to try to enjoy this day because you're the one who got me here anyway. And you're the one who sees, and you're the one that's going to give me enough to make it through today. And I can find the joy in this day. And then I know that when what I call tomorrow gets here, you'll be doing it again. 24 hours at a time. Now I'm going to share another message with you that deals with the blind men and the elephant. And that has to do with what happens when what you're reaching out and you're feeling is more than a day or more than a few months. What if it's a year or two? I mean, what do we do then if it's not just a temporary part of the elephant that doesn't feel good and then it resolves itself in a day or two or a couple of weeks? I mean, what do you do when that elephant turns out to be more like a season in your life of fear or pain or whatever? What do you do then? Well, I'm going to talk to you more about that because I've experienced them both. I've experienced temporary times of the elephant not making sense and feeling good and being fearful. And then I've also experienced seasons, and I'm going through a season right now. And I'll talk to you about that more on a future podcast.